make yourself comfortable.
Hi.
Hi. It's
Thank you for
lovely to
being
have
here.
you here.
Yeah, and thank you for coming out. And I think I was going to say, I'm sure you came out to meet other people. So we'll keep it short, and then you can get to the fun part and get to know each other. Because
no pressure. I'm not good at keeping it short. I like hog the questions, and then I'm like, okay, you can have 5 minutes for Q&A.
I hope Natalie will keep it.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited to talk about your experience, and funding and fundraising and VC is something that comes up all the time in these events. So I am going to try and keep it short from my perspective, actually, because I'm sure we'll have lots of questions from everyone here. But before we get into that, I'd really love to hear a little bit about you and your journey, and whether entrepreneurship was something that you kind of always knew you'd get into. Like, let's go back in time a little bit. Tell me a little bit about how Ella came to be in the adult world.
So this is the question I always ask people when I interview entrepreneurs that we want to back. And I always say, I think being an entrepreneur, there's something irrational about it, because statistics are against you. If you look at the statistics, more kind of startups fail many more, sort of like north of 90% of at least kind of the startups that we back at ZINC, so kind of tech-enabled, venture-backed, most of them are going to fail. So, when we have a room full of people and I say, well, if you look around, maybe 2 of you will be the success, but still everyone goes on that journey. So there's something quite irrational about it. And so I say, why did you want to become an entrepreneur? Why are you an entrepreneur? And I always think there's something in your formative years, like a hint. So that's the question I always ask. And so what is your why? Mm-hmm. And for me, I guess one is growing up in Israel. It's a very entrepreneurial culture. Someone said once to me that like entrepreneurship is one of Israelis' kind of sports. It's like one of our sports, which is true. It's a cultural thing. It's you see it around you. There are a lot of role models. There is a good ecosystem. So I think that's kind of one. And I grew up in a very entrepreneurial household. So my mom, she's a serial entrepreneur. So from like the moment, I can remember myself, I would go to work with her and I see the highs and the lows. And still I chose to be one. So there is something irrational about it. But also I do think that when you have these mental models you go back to, then that's probably part of my DNA. And for many years I was asking myself if that's me or not. And I was kind of working in corporates and in startups. And then I did an MBA. And then there was a moment, so I don't know if you want to talk about it now, but there was a moment of like clarity that I thought, okay, I'm going to go for it, against my mom's advice, by the way, which I thought was quite hypocritical. But then I thought, you know what, I have it in me and I need to get it out. And I did it. So yeah, does it answer the question?
It does. Yeah. And I always want to dig into a moment. But before I do that, I'm really curious, what was your mum's reservations? Because if she was an entrepreneur as well, like what was it that made her not want you to take that path?
It's probably having gone through that. You don't want to wish anyone you love to go through that. No, I'm kidding. So I think it was, so the moment was, I have twins. They're 8 now. They were born. I had a good job, a secure job, doing well, paid well. And I was going to throw it all out of the window for a big unknown where the statistics are against you. And it was really interesting because at the time that I was debating about doing it or not, and it kind of bubbled for some time. So it wasn't like one day I woke up and thought, okay, just fuck it, and I'm going to do it. It kind of built up, and I had my partner. I had to kind of get his buying. So it's a whole, like, it's not just you, right? It's like the people around you, your family, your friends, they need to suffer all your like hardship and stories. So there was this kind of, I went to this talk and it was about inspirational kind of stories. There was no much agenda besides like hearing 3 people talk about their life stories, which was like amazing. But the third guy, his name was Bruno, and he walked in and he was like an amputee. So he had meningitis when he was like 18. He was studying, and then suddenly one day he fell ill, went to hospital, had 1% chance of survival, managed to get through it. Then again, another 1% managed to get through it. He wakes up and realizes he has no arms and legs. And he was like saying how he was lying in hospital, like, and the doctor said to his mom, like, he'll need like 24/7 care for the rest of his life. This guy is now in London giving a motivational speech. So you see kind of where he's now. And he said that there was a moment where he tried to get up And his mom was like, no, let me hold you. You can't do that. And he had this moment. He said, I realized that the people who love you most are going to stop you from taking a risk. And it's not that she didn't love him, but she just wanted to protect him so he doesn't fall. And he was like, I'm never going to get better if I'm here. And he researched and found this rehabilitation center in the US for ex kind of soldiers who came back injured. And the first thing he didn't walk in, no, he didn't. He wheeled himself in. The guy took the wheelchair, threw it out, and said, you're never going to be on a wheelchair ever again. And, a few years later, this guy's kind of standing there giving motivational speech. And that really resonated with me to the point that I thought, actually, the people who love you most are going to be the one who are going to try and prevent you sometimes from taking risks, thinking they're protecting you. And that was like a moment of clarity that I think my mom was trying to protect me, because she was like, you have small children. Why would you leave all of this for some unknown? Is this the right time? You need to invest in your family, because she had a career. So she could kind of look back and say, oh, maybe I should have been, more with the children and stuff. So I think it was coming from a point of care, but I also then acknowledged that the closer they are to you, those people will try and potentially prevent you from taking risks. So that was like a moment of clarity.
Oh my gosh, that resonates so much. And I'd be curious to see if that resonates with people in the room as well. Like, show of hands if anyone feels like that is relevant to them. Yeah, quite a few. Gosh, that's such a good one-liner to remember. Kind of sad, but also a good one. A good one to remember.
Once you made a decision, it's behind you.
Yeah, exactly. Once you're on the other side, you're like, that's sweet. So I'd love to dig a little bit more into the moment of clarity. We spoke a bit about the moment of clarity from the perspective of this is the right thing to do for me. I need to take this risk. What was the moment of clarity around what it is that you were going to then go and do and take this risk with?
Yeah, so I think it was kind of the thing that was bubbling was around, first of all, doing something a bit more innovative and higher risk, and then having impact. So having children for me was a moment of, it's a bit cheesy, I'm sorry, but it was this moment of clarity in terms of, it's not just about wanting to leave the world better for them. I think every parent does it in the way we do things, but it was more about, if I don't spend time with them and I want to have a career, I invested a lot in my career. So I paid tuition fees to do an MBA, and I moved countries because I wanted a bigger exposure and experience. So I've built a lot of stuff, and then I thought, what does it all add up to? And in a way, I knew I wanted to keep developing my career, and I was comfortable with the idea of not being a stay-home or a mom, full-time mom. But I thought, okay, if I'm not with them, it has to be worth my while, and it has to have impact. It has to have a purpose, because it's not enough just to keep progressing my career or someone else's agenda. And I think that was the moment of clarity that it had to be mine, but also it had to have impact. And that was kind of a really important moment. So it's not just about the cheesiness of leaving the world better than it was when you got it, blah, 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 your children. It was really the idea of if I'm not with them, it has to have impact. It has to be worth it. I need to go back and look at them and tell them, I genuinely, I think I've missed all their Halloweens because we started the Venture Builder in October every year. And for some reason, it always happens that we are going away. We have an event. I'm really bad at connecting my personal life to my business life. So my husband now knows, and actually this year again, it's going to happen. But so I'm missing those moments, but I'm really comfortable with that, because I know that, what I'm doing, I'm proud of, I'm enjoying, and I'm making an impact. So I think that was this idea of the value of time changed when I had children. So yeah, that was kind of that moment of clarity. It took some time before ZINC happened. And as I said, I prepared for that, and I had a brief. I left to do something of impact, my own, and people-driven. So not an app and not a tech. And then someone suggested I meet this tech VC. And I was like, I just told you it's not about tech, it's about impact. And the story unfolds that ZINC started through that introduction. But yeah, that was kind of my brief for myself.
Yeah, I really love that, you've spoken about your journey of being a mother in entrepreneurship, and done that so early in this conversation as well, because I think, and I've heard rather from friends of mine who are founders and who have kids, the guilt that's associated with what they're doing. And I would love for them, I've got a couple of people in mind that I'm going to text after this and literally repeat what you just said, because that's such a beautiful way of looking at the trade-offs, and it not having to be a purely negative thing, which I think there is so much more wrapped up in that. And as women, it is harder to do something else when you've got kids at home. But I really, really appreciate you sharing that. And I think that's going to be really powerful for a lot of people to hear.
And just going back to the psychology in my mother, like we're very, very close, but she was not there all the time.
Yeah.
And she made this decision to have a business so she can be home to pick up, like to be there when we come back from school. My parents divorced, but actually she was much more absent than she thought. So, but I think, but we're very, very close. And I think it's the quality of the time and the role model that she played for me. And then also, I mean, I think growing up in Israel, there's lots of good things about going to the army, and you get like exposure to leadership, and there's a lot of bad things, but also the equality of like women can do a lot of stuff. But still, I think having a role model where you think she's the breadwinner, she's doing like kick-ass stuff, like she was super impressive in the things that she's done. And I think that allowed me to, for many years, just to kind of go through life not thinking about my gender. I think there were moments when I had to I worked in a defense company. I was very involved when I was doing my MBA around the women in business, and now with Alma Angels, because I do think it is harder for us if you're not, I'm sorry, but a white male. Anything else is harder. And I do think we need to kind of support each other and do more. But there were a few years where I was quite shielded from that because I just didn't see gender as an issue, or it was just like, you are great, you can do great things. And I think that role modeling is so impactful. So going back to your friends, I think it's just, as long as you're like aligned with what you want to do. And again, like if you want to be home spending time with your kids and that's the best thing that you think you can give them, then that's great. I just think it's like, find what's right for you, and then feel complete about it, and knowing that I think a happy parent is a happy child, at least to start with.
Yeah, exactly. What is perfect for someone else, or the right thing or happy for someone else, is not happy for everyone. We're all unique. Let's own our uniqueness. Anyway, before I start chanting about being yourself, let's talk about ZINC's mission. So ZINC's mission is to create new companies that address the most challenging social issues in the developed world. Love, 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 love. How do you well, first of all, where did that mission first come from? Can you tell us a little bit about that? And then I've got some follow-up questions as well.
So when we started ZINC, so going back to that story, I was introduced to this tech VC who's quite kind of known in the ecosystem. And he introduced me then to my other co-founder. So we kind of got together. And I think what really united us was this idea that there are big societal issues, huge, unmet. And so Paul, my other co-founder, came from kind of public sector and government. And he's like, I tried to fix it. Don't count on government. He was the head of the policy. And it's like, I've seriously tried, it's not going to happen. And then Saul was like backing entrepreneurs, but frustrated sometimes that some of them were like working on things that, you know, you get your delivery in 9 minutes and not in 20 because you really want your gin and tonic now. And it's like, is this like worthwhile, like people's kind of time and energy and money? And I worked with corporates on innovation and thinking, you know, they took a lot, but they're not really making a difference. And so we were all kind of, I guess, feeling that there was this talent around in the world that wanted to make a difference, wanted to build companies and solutions that address these things, but also the ecosystem was kind of driving you to do either or. So either you build like a great delivery last mile company, or you go and work in a charity if you want to do good. Like you can't combine the two. You can't be really ambitious, want to build a category defining company and know that that is going to be super impactful, tackling mental health or later life or things that are at the time were unsexy. So I think we were kind of feeling that there is this gap in the market and an opportunity to build an ecosystem around it. So going back to 2017, there weren't a lot of other funders that were backing these kind of businesses. And actually when people ask us, give us an example of a company that you want to back or you would have wanted to kind of create a ZINC, and we were really scratching our head. There was nothing. We used Sesame Street as an example because that was the closest thing we had, which was actually Sesame Street was designed. So the origin for that was, it was grant funded by the MacArthur Foundation, I think. It was a creative and a researcher came together, and the idea was to try and help specifically kind of Black young boys and girls in the US, where they were kind of, when they were starting school, they were completely behind in terms of their literacy. And they said, how can we harness TV and media and mass kind of mass media in order to improve their literacy. And so that's how they came with the idea of Sesame Street. So it was based on behavioral science and research, and then they used creatives to kind of engage the users, and they use mass media for distribution. And so we're like, that's an example of something we would have wanted to create, because we wanted to bring the insights of behavioral science and social sciences alongside with creatives and tech, so distribution and platforms. And so that was like an example we had to give, because there was nothing like it. And when like we had Michael Acton Smith, he's the founder of Calm. He came in to talk to us in 2017 to the court. No one knew what Calm was. Everyone knew he was the Moshi Monster guy, and he's really cool, but no one knew anything about Calm. And then we did another venture builder on children's mental health, and everyone was like, oh my God, the founder of Calm is in the room. And so it was really interesting, because at the time in 2017, Calm existed, but no one knew about it. And so you didn't have that kind of narrative around companies that are doing well. And now you have more, like you have WageStream, if you look at financial kind of inclusion. So there are a few examples now in health companies, et cetera. So, but at the time there were none of those. So we were kind of trying to kind of think, okay, how do we build an ecosystem around the talent? So starting with the talent, find the best people around the world, make it a platform where they can meet each other, start a business that is both ambitious in terms of, you know, their commercial vision as well as their impact. We said we'll put a mission every time, one mission. So that helps kind of bring people together quite quicker. So you have like shared kind of ambition and values, and then give them a bit of funding and see what happens. So that was kind of our MVP, and people actually showed up. So we're like, okay, now we have to incorporate and raise money and make it work. But that was the hypothesis. It was like, can we find those people? Can we help them fund a business? And can these businesses show at least initial traction in terms of building things that address the mission that we were putting in front of them? And can they raise money, which was for us a proxy for their commercial potential success?
Awesome, I love that. And as you've kind of grown the business from 2017 and you know, more people in the team that are helping alongside the mission, how do you stay aligned to it, and how do you kind of know that you're successful? Like, how do you measure success in that journey?
That's the important thing. I don't think we are successful. You know, you're all like, I don't know. I don't know if everyone else feels this way. I don't feel successful, but I do feel that we're measuring ourselves. So our measurement for success is looking at our portfolio. So are they making impact? How many users they're addressing or solving problems for? What's their evaluation in terms of kind of that's the commercial kind of side of things. How many jobs they've created. So we have different things that we're looking at. First, the fact that they're still surviving is like, you know, great, because as we talked about it, the statistics are statistics against them. So for us, as the portfolio grows, it's just showing that they're still kind of on mission, and that they are kind of growing in a way that is sustainable from a commercial perspective. And then from a brand perspective, I think it's just showing that we can get the best talent to try and come and join us to build our businesses. So do we get like inflow of great candidates? Do we have to tell people, actually, we can't take you this time? So do we have more than we can actually accommodate for? So those will be like the external stuff. Obviously, like our team, do we have a happy team? Are they thriving? Are they happy to come to do what they do, and do they do that well? And now we're looking internal, kind of the way we think about it is the quality of what we do and our growth ambition. So those are the two things we're focusing on as a business now. And so the quality is those kind of the portfolio companies, and the growth is how do we keep growing our impact and the things we do, and the growth of the companies in our portfolio.
Lots of things that you look at. Yeah. I love the fact that you said, I don't feel successful. And I'm sure a lot of us, like as founders, feel like that. So the first thing to just note for all of us is that it's very normal to feel like that, regardless of whether you started in 2017 and you are still going, or whether you've just started out. So I think that's a super relatable thing for us all to remember. That it always feels like there's more to do. Something that I'm really curious about, and I was really excited to talk to you about this specifically. So something that I talk about a lot is the idea that you can be purpose-driven and profitable at the same time. And I know that that's something that's really important to you and ZINC as well. And the more that I've been in the startup space, and I do a lot of startup accelerators where I talk about purpose, vision, and culture and values and things like that. And when I first started doing those, I was quite alarmed the amount of people that I would have conversations with on those accelerators about that, where they would say, like, how can I deliver this impact for the community and be profitable at the same time? Like, it felt like it was almost like a bit of an icky, like, shameful thing. And I have a really strong point of view on this, but I'd love to hear a bit from you about what that balancing of social impact and financial stability looks like, and how, well, what would your response be to that kind of icky feeling that maybe the two can't coexist?
I mean, that's our reason for being. We're trying to prove that you can be both. And more than that in order to gain the impact, you have to be really commercially savvy, ambitious, successful. Otherwise, you can't deliver on your impact.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of, for us, that's the whole point of ZINC, is to grow a lot of success stories that people can point to. And I think it comes down to a few things. One is, I think people should be feeling unapologetic about it. So that I am unapologetic. I want to make money. I want to make my investors return more than return their investment. So 3, 4 exit, 5 exit if I can. And I want to reassure them that also their money has gone to build things that really matter and help move the needle on things like climate and mental health and later life and financial resilience. So that's kind of my reason for being, and that's what I'm there to prove. And I have skin in the game. That's kind of my upside is tied to this kind of being successful. So that's kind of one. The second thing I think is finding business models that allow for that. So I think it's not about doing good here and doing well here. It's about aligning the two. So how do you build businesses that the more impact you deliver, the more successful you are. And that gives you more permission to charge more and then do more of that. So I think it's just being more innovative. That's why it is harder. I genuinely think building businesses is very hard to start with. I think building scalable kind of high growth, fast-paced businesses is even harder. And then I think if you're trying to do that in kind of an impactful way, like from a mission perspective, it's even harder. So it is hard, and that's why I think like we want to exist as an investor to help people go through that journey. So I don't think it's easy at all, but I think it's about finding and building business models that really have that kind of, it's a bit of a jargon like the flywheel, but it's like the more successful you are, the more impact you're having. So you have to be innovative, and I think that's why also the commercial thinking needs to come at the very kind of beginning part of the origination of the idea and the business. You have to have that in mind. It's not enough to come up with a great idea or a solution that people have if you can't at that point imagine at least how you're going to monetize it, who's going to pay for it. You don't have to have business plans and all of that. I don't believe in that, but you have to have a point of view about how, if that is successful, who's going to pay for it and why. And I also think the other point that, like, I think charities are amazing and what they do and they need to exist, but I think when you have that commercial mindset, it means that you have to deliver something that people are willing to pay for. Then the value of what you're delivering has to be 10x, because if it's a charity and it doesn't have to kind of, no one needs to pay for it in terms of the user or the beneficiaries, the bar could become a bit lower in terms of the value that you're creating. Whereas if someone has to pay for it, someone needs to see the value. And if it's not a one-off, if it's a SaaS model, if they have to kind of, or a high purchase item, then that has to have a really good value. And so the only way to make sure you're delivering values is to make sure that someone is willing to pay for it, whether it's the user, the beneficiary, or corporate, or someone else. But if someone is willing to pay for it, then that kind of, in my view, already kind of suggests there is some value in it.
Yeah. I mean, what's been ringing in my ears is being unapologetic about earning money. Just yes, yes, yes. I feel like we all need to say that to ourselves in the mirror every morning, especially as women as well. Speaking of which, I would love to talk about Alma Angels and hear a little bit more about how that came to be and some of the work that you're doing there.
So we have, so just in terms of how ZINC works, so let me give you kind of now the technical stuff. So we put a mission out, a call for a mission. So the first one was women and girls mental health. So that was, and roughly speaking, we look at kind of commercial people,
products and tech, creatives, and then domain experts. So roughly speaking, these are kind of the three pools of people. And we kind of select, so we have quite a neat process. So from like 1,000+ applications, we end up with a cohort of 60 to 70 people, all start on the same day, quit their jobs. This is like a full-time commitment. And the first investment we make is into you as a founder. So we give you a stipend. It's not much, but it's enough, hopefully, to get you going and gives you a 6 months runway. And through those 6 months, you're trying to find a co-founder. So we give you access to like-minded people. You want to find a problem within the mission that you really want to be focusing on. You start building, your solution, hypothesizing it, testing with user, building traction, iterating. We're very kind of human or centered kind of design principles. You start iterating, and then you build a business kind of model. You have a point of view of how you're going to commercialize it, and then after 6 months, we have the opportunity to then invest in you as a venture. So you're moving from a collection of 60 people to, say 20, 15 teams that we can then back. So we provide the first check. So we'll put 80K into your company and then another 6 months of support. And in the first 6 months, we also have 100 visiting fellows. So those are experts and coaches. By the way, a lot of people coming, there is a reason why they're coming to us. And even if they were successful entrepreneurs before, they may have not built it in this mission. So there's something that you need to unlock. And so coaching is a massive thing for us. And we believe in the power of that. So people get access to coaching and R&D team and all of that. We then invest 6 more months. So we attract diversity of in terms of background, in terms of demographics. So which is cool because I'm really fortunate to be working in a sector, or the way ZINC operates, it attracts a lot of great people. We don't have to really, I think as opposed to a lot of other tech investors, work really hard to get a good pipeline, because I think by design, by being mission driven, we attract the best people, and the best people are just distributed evenly. So we had 50% women in our cohorts, and I did notice that it was harder for them to raise the initial money, kind of angel rounds. And the reason is mainly because they don't have the right networks. So if you're a woman, you're less likely to have worked in investment banking or consulting. In my days, you were less likely to do an MBA. So I think in my time, we were 25% or 20%. So by design, you're less likely to have the right network of friends and family to put the angel money into your company. And I found it really frustrating. And so one day, one of the, at the time, super angel that was committed to investing in female founders, and she invested in a couple of our companies, called me up and she's like, Ella, where do you find angels for your female founders? And I was like, well, they're not really sitting on a tree waiting for me to call them. I was like, but actually, why don't we do that? Why don't we create that kind of pool or tree rather than bitching about it? And so we then called another friend of mine who was mentoring a lot of our female founders. And by the way, we're talking about cultures before, and I'm a big believer that in order to move the needle on those things, you can't have only women in the room. You need to have men in that kind of room. And if you don't have in the founding team a man, then it's going to be harder to attract them into the community. So, he's a man, but also a very good investor, was champion of a lot of our female founders, and someone that he built a lot of communities. And I knew that this was going to be a community play. So tapped into his kind of, into him, said, are you in? He's like, yes. And then the fourth person, Christine, I met her. She was just moving back to London, did her first angel investment, ex-marketeer. And she was like, okay, we need also that kind of skill. And she was really passionate. It was like, she's the kind of people I want to have, because she was committed. She invested in a female founder. It's like, I want to do more of that. It's like, okay, you're like our target audience. So the four of us started Alma Angels as a way to kind of build a community of angels that were committed to investing in female founders, that they wanted to write checks into female founders. They also wanted to be part of a community. So some of them are more experienced angels. Some of them are just doing the first angel investment, and that was part of the value proposition to all of them. And again, MVP, we had a breakfast with a few of them, then started a community, obviously end of 2019, so 2020, COVID hit. And actually it was really good for us because we were able to grow the community quite substantially over virtually. And so the idea was to try and create a pool of people that you can call up on and say, hey, here's a female founder investing, do you want to have a look? And so through Alma Angels, we've raised, I think, over 5 million, I don't know now if it's dollar or pounds. I think it was dollars at the time, but now we've raised more. over 150 deals. In the network, we ended up having 350 angels. We scaled it back a bit, so we did a bit of a house cleanup last year because we thought there were a lot of people who thought they wanted to be part of the community, maybe thought they were going to invest, they didn't. So we're like, it's really important that people actually deploy capital, and it doesn't matter if they sometimes, and that's going back, I think, one of the questions around angel investment, even if they put 5K, sometimes the value that they bring is so much bigger than that. It's their network, it's their expertise, it's having a sounding board, especially in the early days, it just needs someone to kind of be there with you. And so we were really encouraging people to put any amount of money, but just be part of that kind of journey. And that's the way for them to learn if they're first-time investors. But a lot of them are operators, so they might be working in a relevant kind of industry, and they can bring a lot of value that is way beyond their money. And so, and then selfishly, obviously, I direct ZINC companies to our angels, so that also benefits our own founders. But it was really thinking about how do we do something that is more about the ecosystem, so female founders get the same access to that capital. And going back to this idea of the founding team, 25% of the members are men. So like whatever you have in your founding team is going to translate, I think, unless you, again, you have to really consciously think about it. But I think it's easier to think about it once, have a right kind of starting point, and then you don't have to think about it much later. Whereas if it's not naturally what you do, you have to keep correcting for it. So that's my tip around cultures and stuff. But you're the expert.
It's not about me, it's about you. I'm conscious of time, and I do want to open up to Q&A. So my final question before we open up to the room is I'd love to hear what your advice would be to founders who are thinking about raising investment, or they've seen that everyone they know who's a founder is raising investment, and they're like, oh, I probably need to do that. Like, what would be your advice for someone who hasn't gone down that route but is starting to think about that?
So I think the FOMO of everyone else is raising money is like the really wrong motivation. Don't do that. Like, it's so like hard and hard. Yeah, it's hard. So if you don't have to, don't do that. If you think it's the right thing for the business, then I think first of all, ask yourself what kind of capital I want to take. VC capital is very specific. I think 1% of businesses actually get VC money. VCs are designed to do something very specific, so you have to really fit their way of seeing the world. So if you know how VC models work, then you have to be what we call a fund returner. They have to think that you can create like 100x on the investment. It's a very, very specific and narrow way to see the world. And them saying no to you doesn't mean it's not a good business. It just means it doesn't fit their specific model. So get yourself really familiar about how VC works, and do you want their money? Because once you're on that treadmill, it's really hard to get off, and it's self-fulfilling. And if you're good, actually, they're going to want you to do more and more and more. And there's like this expectation of raising more and raising. So you're onto this certain trajectory in terms of the scale, in terms of the growth, the pace, all of that. So it's a good way to get money to grow fast, but you have to know that you fit them, the kind of the way VC funds work in order. Like, does your business fit the way they think about it? And this is the kind of funding that you want to have. So ask yourself that question first. If it's not VC, I think, again, with angels, just think about what's the purpose of the capital, how are you going to use it, who you want to have there with you, especially in the early days. It's really important. Is it a loan? Is it angel? Is it VCs? Grant funding? I think the reality at the moment, it's really hard, and I think underrepresented founders are suffering more. I think the risk aversion is higher these days for VCs. The world is getting harder for them as well to raise funding. There's a lot of reason why it's happening in interest rates and all that. So if you're going down the VC route, it's a very specific one, and it is harder. And if you're an underrepresented founder, you have to be really mindful about it. If you're going through angels round, find again, angels are usually people who believe in you at the start of it. So find ways to build that kind of credibility or relationships. Penetrating those networks would be another one. Anything you can do, again, to show traction, even if it's small revenues, I think goes a long way on all of these type of funding, whether it's angels or VCs or others. I think like this startup kind of program here is amazing, and knowing that you're tripling your investment is like, wow, that's brilliant. So good to hear. So there are other kind of programs, and just so think what is right for you. What are you trying to achieve with that capital? And also imagine if that was successful, where does that lead you? So, and work backwards. So in 18 months time, 24 months time, where do I want to be? How much capital do I need in order to get it? So what do I need to do? How much money does it require? And that's what you're selling basically those investors. Is saying, if you put the money now, this is where we're going to be in 18 to 24 months. And that's kind of where you need to go. So you need to kind of sell them that, and then the 10-year vision. And if that goes well, in 10 years time, this is where my business is going to be. So it's always kind of working from that and backwards. And also, I guess, just be open to connections, introductions. A lot of it is, it is the people invest in people. Also VCs, they don't really have maybe later stage, but early stage is really about conviction in people. So you have to build those relationships. I think one of the questions in the break was what to tell people if they're afraid of the rejection of going through.
I was just thinking about that. I was like, oh shit, I've got a follow-up question. That was what it was going to be.
So my answer was don't do it, because you're going to get rejected. That's the reality of it. You'll have to kiss 100 frogs, 1,000 frogs. When we raised, so I raised the fund. So I raised money for ZINC, and then we raised the fund. I think we have 1,000 people in our Airtable that we actually either harassed, emailed, LinkedIn, got warm introductions. Warm introductions obviously is the best thing, but again, warm introductions could be 2-3 degrees of separation. So you go to someone who then introduces you to them. It's a hard work, and you will get rejected, and just get comfortable with it. Otherwise, don't even get going, because the likelihood of you getting the first yes or even the second is just, maybe you are amazing and well done for you if you get that, but otherwise it'll be a lot of rejection. Just get comfortable with it. And it's not a reflection on you, it's a reflection on that person's investment thesis, whether it's an angel or a VC or a grant funder. They have a particular thing they're trying to achieve, and you just don't fit that. It doesn't make you not a good founder or your business not a good business. So I think just detach that and decouple that. You will get rejected, it's okay.
I love that. So many great tips there. And to add a tip that my mum always says, every no opens the door. Let me start again. I've got to make sure I'm quoting Trace right. Every no opens the, no, I said the same thing again. Every no gets you one step closer to a yes. Oh. Thank you, Tracy Pierce. Awesome. Thank you so much. It's been amazing to speak to you. There's so many gems that you've shared. I'm going to have to watch back the video and make notes. Thank you all for being here. Can we have a round of applause for